Hello everyone, we are going to present to you our report, which is Module 4, Software Requirements Gathering. What is data types? Data types is a classification that specifies which type of value a variable has and what type of mathematical, relational, or logical operations can be applied to it without causing an error. So na-6 ka several important dimension ang data types, which is time orientation, structure, completeness, ambiguity, semantics, and volume. So each of these dimension is important, especially in defining requirements of applications because they give guidance to the SE about how much and what type of information should be collected. And also, ang different data types is related siya sa different application type and different requirements techniques. Next is time orientation. Time orientation of data refers to past, present, or future requirements of a proposed application. Past information is exact, complete, and accurate. Current information is information about what is happening now and its relevance in determining the future. For instance, ang current information relates to operations of the company, the number of orders taken in a day, or the amount of goods produced. Ang current information, kailangan siya i-document para dali ra siya mabasa and ma-review sa mga taga-development team for them to increase their knowledge of the application and problem domains. Future requirements relates to the changes in the industry expected to take place. They are inexact and difficult to verify. Examples of future requirements are sales trend projections, business prognostication, and economic forecast. Future-oriented information might be used, for example, by managers in an executive information system or EIS. Next is structure. Structure of information refers to the extent to which the information can be classified in some way. So when you begin collecting information about employees for a personal application, syempre imong kuhaon ang mga information niya kung unsay skills sa employees, unsay job history information niya, company position history, salary history, and performance reviews. The information comes to you in pieces that may not have an obvious structure. But you know that all of the data relates to an employee, so there must be relationships somewhere. So this is the example of unstructured personnel data. It means it could be anything in the data sets that aren't stored in a structural database format or dili siya organized. So makita ninyo sa example nga ang name, age, address, wala siya naka-organize. Unlike sa next nga example, sa next slide, which is ang structured personal data, meaning it is highly organized and easily understood by machine language. So, ang personal information, dependent information, job information, performance ratings, race information, naka-arrange siya sa designated area niya. So, muna siya ang structured personal data. Next is completeness. Information varies in completeness, the extent to which all the desired information is present. Each application type has a requisite level of data completeness with which it deals. So, dapat ang mga ma-transact or ma-collect na data is dapat complete and accurate siya kay if naay kulang, then magka-problema o gather og information nga accurate. Next is ambiguity. Ambiguity is a property of data such that it is vague in meaning or is subject to multiple meanings. Since ambiguity deals with meaning, it is closely related sa semantics. So for example, ani is the print sales for July in New York. In this query, New York can mean New York State or New York City. Both answers would be correct. Obvious problems will occur to a person who asks that request for one context, which is the state, and gets an answer for the other context, which is the city. Contextual cues help SEs to define the one correct interpretation of ambiguous item. Further problems arise because of multiple semantic interpretations within a single context. For that reason, semantics is discussed in the next slide. So, semantics. Semantics is the study of development and change in the meaning of words. In business application, semantics is the meaning attached to words, meaning a social construction that is the people in the organization have a collectively shared definition of how some term, policy, or action is really interpreted. Semantics is important in applications development and in the applications themselves. If people use the same terms but have different meanings for the terms, misunderstanding and miscommunications are assured. An example of semantic problems can be seen in a large insurance company. The company uses the term institution to refer to its major clients for retirement funds. The problem is that institution means different things to different people in the company. In one meeting, specifically convened to define institution, 17 definitions surfaced. The problem with semantic differences is not that 16 of the 17 definitions are wrong. The problem is that all 17 definitions are right, depending on the context of their use. So diha na mosulod ang mga trabaho sa SE para i-define nila kung unsa ang sakto nga term sa institution, and it took about 20 person or months or over a 2-year period to get the user community to reach consensus on the corporate definition of the term institution. Next is volume. Volume is the number of business events the system must cope with in some period. The volume of new or changed customers is estimated on a monthly or annual basis, whereas the volume of transaction for business operation is usually measured in volume per day or hour and peak volume. Peak volume is the number of transaction or business events to be processed during the busiest period. The peak period must be annual and last several months, as with tax preparation. The peak might be measured in seconds and minutes, for example, to meet a Federal Reserve Bank closing deadline. Volume of data is a source of complexity because the amount of time required to process a single transaction can become critical to having adequate response time when processing large volumes. Interactive online applications can be simple or extremely complex simply because of volume. Next is
We are now on 4.2 requirements or data gathering techniques. So there are 7 techniques used for data gathering. First one is interviews, group second group meetings, third observation, fourth temporary job assignment, fifth questionnaires, and sixth review of internal and outside documents, and last one review of software. So I will be discussing about interviews and group meetings. So take note that we always want to validate the information received from any source through triangulation. So triangulation is obtaining the same information from multiple sources. And the first and the triangulation refers to the use of multiple methods or data sources. So the first technique is the single interview or the interview. So, ang interview is a gathering of a small number of people for a fixed period and with a specific purpose. So, interviews with one or two users at a time are the most popular method of requirements elicitation. Interviews should always be conducted such that both participants feel satisfied with the results. So, before proceeding to the other features of interviews, here is the summary of data collection techniques. Specifically, their strengths and weaknesses. So for the interviews, its strengths are get both qualitative and quantitative information since free man ang pagflow sa conversation or sa information. Second, get both detail and summary information. Third, good method for surfacing requirements. And its weaknesses are, it takes some skill, specifically communication skills, since face-to-face man siya. So, dapat maayo ka mag-istorya, makipag-communicate sa other people sa imong interview. May obtain biased results, can result in misleading, inaccurate, or irrelevant information kay since interview man siya. So, na ay time nga ma-overwhelm yung mga interviewee and maka-share na siya og mga out-of-topic informations. Also, it requires triangulation to verify results. So, ang triangulation means using more than one method to collect data on the same topic. This is a way of assuring the validity of research through the use of variety of methods to collect data on the same topic, which involves different types of samples as well as methods of data collection. So, din siya useful with large numbers of people to be interviewed. So, dapat kamay lang na. Tapos sa group meetings, yung strengths are decisions can be made and can get both detail and summary information. Also good for surfacing requirements. Gets many users involved since group meetings man siya. Though, na-share weaknesses, which is decisions with large number of participants can take a long time, waste time. So, since daghan lang mo, so, daghan ang opinion, so, mag-debate pa or mag-vote kung unsa jud ang final decision as a group. Plus interruptions divert attention of participants. Since pag na-group meeting na dyan, mang-ring ang mga cellphone, na ay mag-open sa door while gamiting, and arguments about turf, politics, etc. can occur. Since hindi man dyan na maiwasan na yung ma-bring up na topic, tapos lahi mag-opinion na, tapos mawala din na magsugod ang argument, and wrong participants lead to low results. So, pag wrong, kung dili maong participant ang inyong makuha, mag-lead na to low results. Tapos observation. Sa iyong strengths is our surface unarticulated procedures, decision criteria, reasoning processes, not biased by opinion since observation man siya. So, sa imong perspective, magikan, tapos ang imong observation is based rapod sa imong ma-observe and based sa facts nga imong makita sa imong gina-observeran. An observer gets good problem domain understanding since takes mag Google ka og time na to observe, and with that maayo yung pag-interpret sa problem, pagsabot, tapos you can create good analysis by that observation. And also, nasa weaknesses, it might not be representative time period, behavior might be changed as a result of being observed, and also observation is time consuming. Another one is review software. Strengths. Good for learning current work procedures as constrained or guided by software design. Good for identifying questions to ask users about functions, how they work, and whether they should be kept. Its weaknesses are may not be current, may be inaccurate, and also time consuming. Or questionnaire strengths. Its strengths are anonymity for respondents. Since questionnaire man siya, so dili na magsulat sa pangalan, pwede ra nga dili i-disclose ang identity, and attitudes and feelings might be more honestly expressed. Since kuan man kanang base man, di siya ma-pressure og answer since walay gatan-aw, walay observe, yahara, and large numbers of people can be surveyed easily since pwede ra ka magpa-float o mga questionnaire sa mga tao, random people. So, best for limited response, close-ended questions. Kung gusto ka, limited lang ang response sa tao sa questionnaire ka. Usually, jud, sa questionnaires, close-ended questions, jud na mga questions na answerable by yes or no. Lastly, good for multicultural companies to surface biases or requirements and design features that should be customized to fit local conventions. Its weaknesses are recall may be imperfect. Second one is unanswered questions mean you cannot get the information since pagpalig sa mga questionnaires, if ever lugar pagtanan mo wala siya answers number 1, wala siya answer number 5, so di na mo siya malakag to para ma-answer niya or dili ka makapugo sa iya to answer that student question. And questions might be misinterpreted. So, ma-misinterpret siya since siya raman ang magbasa. Siya raman magbasa tapos ang i-answer based sa iyang own understanding sa question. Pero if naa ka, pwede raw siya makapunta na si Muha. And also, reliability or validity may be low. Lastly, might not add useful information to what is already known since unlike sa interview, unlimited ang info nga pwede nimo makuha siya. While ang sa questionnaire is na ano man ang question daan. So, mag-base ang i-answer sa question na nimo. So, other one is temporary assignment. Strengths are good to learn current context, terminology, procedures, problems, basis for questions you might not otherwise ask, and its weaknesses are may not include representative work activities or time period. Time-consuming po siya, may bias future design work. Another one is review internal documents. Strengths, good for learning history and politics, explains current context, good for understanding current application. Weaknesses are may bias, feature design, work, saves interview user time, not useful for obtaining attitudes or motivations. And the last one is review external documents. Its strength is good for identifying industry trends, surveys, expert opinions, other companies' experiences, and technical information relating to the problem domain. Weaknesses may not be relevant, information may not be accurate, may bias future design work. So let's proceed to steps to conducting a successful interview. So continuation siya sa definition sa interview ganiha. So doon ay para mas successful ang interview. First one is make an appointment that is at the convenience of the interviewee. Of course, ikaw mag-adjust kay ikaw may nangayag time, ikaw may nangayag favor. So, second one is prepare the interview. You must be ready before conducting the interview para di ka magnganga. And know the interviewee. Background check ka, kung sa yung profile, tapos yung para makabalo ka, saan mo pag-approach mo interviewee. Tapos, 3, be on time. Of course, as an interviewer, ikaw may nangayag favor, dapat on time jud ka or mas early pa ka sa time nga mo set para good impression po sa imong interviewee. Tapos number 4, have a plan beginning to the interview. Sabi na siya. So introduce yourself and your role on the project. Daghan mo and mag-introduce mo isa-isa, tapos yung role, tapos pwede na po hatag mong expectations sa inyong interview. Tapos use open-ended general questions to begin the discussion. Basta mo, pwede ra ana. Tapos be interested in all responses, pay attention. So dapat throughout the interview dapat ipakita nimo sa inyong interviewee nga happy ka na interested ka sa ilang pang-istorya para ganahan pa sila answer sa imo ha. And number 5, have a planned middle to the interview. So, siya combine open-ended and close-ended questions to obtain the information you want. So, sa imong middle, pwede ka mag-question of yes or no ra answer or pwede question in a sentence form answer. And follow up comments by proving for more detail. And provide feedback to the interviewee in the form of comments such as, let me tell you what you think, you mean. Limit your note-taking to avoid distracting the interview also. So, kung pwede lang, pwede ra ka mag-record for para maka-take of note after this interview. And limit your note-taking. So, number 6, have a plan closing to the interview. So, mano na siya dari ang summarize what you have heard, ask for correction as needed. Kung naakay mga wala na sabtan or naakay mga confusions yung tubag, pwede ka mag-ask. And request for feedback, not validation or other actions of interviewee. Give him or her a date by which they will receive information for review. Tapos, mas better pag nga i-ask nimo sila sa ilahang um, free time or date by which the interview should be complete. Kung kuan siya, interview siya nga by session. Tapos, if a follow-up interview is scheduled, confirm the date and time. So, mo sila i-confirm nimo ang date and time para walay masalakag. Tapos, interviews use two types of questions. An open-ended question is one that asks for a multi-response. So, open-ended is kanang mga questions nga sa interview nga by sentence ang pag-answer. Tapos, open-ended questions are good for eliciting descriptions of current and proposed application functions and for identifying feelings, opinions, and expectation about a proposed application. So second type of question is close-ended question. It is a question in which you can ask a question with answerable by yes or no. So it is a specific answer. Tapos close-ended questions are good for eliciting factual information or forcing people to take a position or on a sensitive issue. So, ang close-ended question daw is more siya na force effects since kung man siya fix ang answer like say yes or no or kung answerable by a specific answer like are you favor of same-sex marriage or no, yes or no ra na siya. Next one. The questions can be ordered in a such way that the interview might be. So there are two types of interview. First one is structured interview. It is one in which the interviewer has an agenda of items to cover, specific questions to ask, and specific information desired. So, ang structured interview, it makes use of standardized sequence of questioning in order to gather relevant information about a research subject. So this type of research is mostly used in statistical investigation and follows a premeditated sequence. So the researcher creates a set of interview questions in advance. And structured interview can also be known or called as patterned interview, planned interview, or a standardized interview. So, naa siya yung mga strength, and one of these is easy to administer and evaluate since structured man siya na siya questions daan. Tapos, yung weakness is cost of preparation can be high since mag-encode pa, mag-print, pag-reproduce sa mga questionnaires, etc. And ang iyang example lagi is ang surveys or questionnaires. Another type is unstructured interview. It is one in which the interview unfolds and is directed by responses of the interviewee. The questions tend to be mostly open-ended. So, ano siya? Interview ganun. Unstructured interview is spontaneous, so sunod-sunod ang conversation, not a specific set of questions asked in a predetermined order, and mag-focus siya sa kung sa imong gusto nga i-collect nga information about different aspects of the belief sa system. And na siya strength, provides greater flexibility in question wording to suit respondent. So, mo siya ang example is verbal interview. Tapos, ang weakness is takes more time to collect essential facts. Of course. So, sa interview, dyan na mga common behavior ng interviewee. So, naapay common response dapat buhatan ang interviewer. So, like, Kung ang interviewee guesses at answers rather than admit ignorance, nang maglama-lama rag tubag bisag wala ka balo, wala jud ka sabot sa question. So imong buhatan na as an interviewer, after the interview i-cross check nimo ang answers or recheck kung mao man jud ang dapat buhatan. Tapos second is tries to tell interviewer what she or he wants to hear rather than correct facts. So pag inaan na, be persistent in bringing the discussion to the desired topic. So di makakagusto nga mali imuhang makuha nga data or biased ang data nga imong makollect. So be persistent, be affirmative sa imong main topic. Third is gives irrelevant information. Pag inana, ayan na i-take note. Be persistent in bringing the discussion to the desired topic. Tapos, fourth is stop stalking when the interviewer take notes. So, dili ka, pag inana, okay, mao dyan na ang common buhatan sa interviewee. Dapat, i-avoid na nimo mag-take note. Rather, pwede ka mag voice record para naakay solid nga record sa interview, and write notes as soon as interview is done. So after na ka magbuhat og notes pagkaman sa interview, and ask only the most important questions. Have more than one interview to get all the information para dili ma-pressure ang interviewee. Pwede ka mag-create og sessions of interview. Tapos if ang interview is rushes through the interview, so kuan siya kan dali pwede nimo siya suggest coming back later para dili siya, para ang imuhang information na makuha is kanang dili answers nga under pressure. So next is wants no change because she or he likes the current work environment. So, imo siya i-encourage to encourage elaboration of present work environment and good aspects. Use the information, define what gets kept from the current method. Next is shows resentment, withholds information or answers guardedly. So, murag ka ng timi-timi rin yung pa-answer or na-ashay na magdudua siya sa pa-answer. So, begin the interview with personal chit-chat on a topic of interest to the interviewee after the person starts talking. Work into the interview. So, before mag-start ang interview, i-make sure jud nga imong makuha yung heart. And kuan para throughout the interview, comfortable siya sa pag-answer. And next is not cooperative, refusing to give information. So, same sila sa previous. So, get information elsewhere. So, pag ang interviewee is feeling mo binakakla yung answer, you can ask a person na kailan nila to verify their answer. Yes. So, let's proceed to the second technique of data gathering, which is a meeting or meetings. So meetings are gatherings of 3 or more people for a fixed period to discuss a small number of topics and sometimes to reach consensus decisions. So meetings can both complement and replace of interviews sa interviews. And sa meetings, naata gitawag nga Joint Application Development or JAD. It is a special form of meeting in which users and technicians meet continuously over several days to identify applications requirements. So, ang iyang focal point of JAD is ang process JAD is the series of JAD sessions that are attended by stakeholders, executives, SMEs, kung dagot na nga systems inyong ginabuhat, and users, business analysts, software architects, and developers. So there are some typical rules found in a JAD session include facilitator, dapat isa ra na. So usually sila ang mga senior business analysts, sila ang mag-facilitate sa discussion, enforces rules. Tapos scribe, pwede isa or duha, sometimes more junior BAs. Sila ang mag-take note sa meeting and clearly document all decisions. Tapos ang inyong end users pwede 3 to 5 dapat naka-attend sila sa tanan sessions. Tapos technical experts pwede 1 or 2. Tapos sila ang question for clarification and give feedback on technical constraints. Tapos tiebreakers, senior manager, executive breaks, and user ties usually doesn't attend. Tapos subject matter expert, observers 2 or 3, pwede 2 or 3, junior BAs or testers or etc. So mag-observe lang sila. So dili sila required na mag-istorya.
So the next method is using observations. It is a manual or automated monitoring of one or more persons' work. So there are two types. First type is the manual observation. It is where a person sits with the individual being observed and takes notes of the activities and steps performed during the work. So it's like physical observation. And in the second type is automated observations. It's where a computer keeps track of software used and actions performed using a computer. So you use a computer to observe your users' activities. So one of its advantages is that it is useful for gathering informations for users who are not familiar with their works. For example, taking protocols from users' work. So a protocol is a minute-by-minute list of actions performed by a person. So its disadvantages is that the time of observation is not representative to the normal activities of the place. Second is that the idea that a person is being observed might lead them to change their behavior. For example, some users might get anxious when someone is observing them. Next is it can be time consuming and it may not yield greater understanding than other methods of data collection. So additional notes on using observation. You must first identify and define what is being observed, and then you specify how long the observation requires. And it is unethical to observe someone without their knowledge nor approval. So you must always ask first the user's approval in order to observe them. Next is the temporary job assignment. It allows you to be more knowledgeable about the problem domain and gives basis for formulating questions about which functions can be kept, discarded, or modified. So in a temporary job assignment, you get more appreciation for the task because you get first-hand experience in doing the task. So one of its disadvantages, because you have to get first-hand experience, it will obviously be time-consuming and may not be a representative period. So the usual length is 2 weeks to 1 month. And taking the temporary assignment might become biased about the work process, content, or people in a way that affects future design work. Next is questionnaires. Questionnaires is a paper-based or computer-based form of interview used to gather information from a large number of people and grants anonymity, which can lead to having a more honest and reliable answers. So the two types of response or questions can be used in a questionnaire. First is the open-ended questions and the closed-ended questions. The open-ended questions cannot be answered by a yes or no response. For example, what is your name? That is not an open-ended question because you cannot answer yes to it. And the closed-ended questions are answerable by a yes or no. So, in questionnaire making, when you make a questionnaire, it has to have validity and reliability. So first, reliability. It is the extent to which a questionnaire is free from errors. It can be improved by testing the questionnaire. So you keep testing the questionnaires, you can minimize its errors, and you will get more reliable answers. So when the responses are tallied, statistical techniques are used to verify the reliability of related sets of questions. Questions that measure emotional characteristics tend to be unreliable, as the answers are influenced by how the person feels at that time they answer the questionnaire. So in validity, it is the extent to which the questionnaire measures what you think you are measuring. So in order to have a valid questionnaires, you must ask for answers which are objective and are not tied to an individual's self-perception. So questions must not involve any individual bias, for example, their emotions, what they feel. So guidelines for questionnaire development. First, you must determine desired facts and qualified people qualified for the questionnaires. Second, for each fact, you need to select if it's either an open-ended, a close-ended, or a close-ended questions. We need to write several questions and choose one or two that's the most clearest to understand, so that they can easily ask for you can easily ask them for the information you want. Next is you divide questions or group them by topic area. So you sort them into their related areas. And number 4, you examine the questionnaire for problems. Several problems may include that 2 questions asking the same information, some ambiguous questions for which respondents might not have the answer, questions that have a bias in its response, questions that are open to interpretation by job function, level of organization, etc., etc. Responses that are not comprehensive of all possible answers, and confusing of ordering questions or responses. If you identify those errors, you either fix them or remove them from the questionnaire. Next is you test the questionnaire on a small sample and ask for comments. And then you analyze the comments and fix whatever it is that whatever problems have occurred during the testing. Next is you analyze responses to ensure that they give the type of response desired. And if the information is different than what you expected, the questions might not be direct enough and need rewording. If you don't get useful information that you don't already know, re-examine the need for the questionnaire. Number 10 is you make final edits, print in an easy to read type, and prepare a cover letter. And then lastly, you distribute the questionnaire, addressing the cover letter to the person by name, include specific instructions about returning the questionnaire, and provide a self-addressed stamp envelope if you require to mail them. Next is the document review. It is a study of documentations used to teach new employees to guide daily work, or to use an application that can provide insight on how work is done. So you review documents. So by documents, it refers to written policy manuals, regulations, and standard operating procedures that organizations provide as a guide for managers and employees. So documents are not always internal to a company. It is not always like it is only within the company. So you can also review documents that are outside the company bounds or the business grounds. These are called external documents, and they might be useful and include technical publications, research reports, public surveys, and regulatory information. So these are the examples of documents. There are policies, procedures, manuals, mission statements, organization charts, so on and so forth. One of its advantages, it is useful for learning about an area which they have no previous experience. For example, you observe an unfamiliar workplace. Using document review, You scan the documents, the manuals, and other policies related to that building, and you can familiarize yourself with the workplace. It is also useful for identifying issues or questions about the work processes or work products for which users need a history. So if you have complications in a certain process, in a certain workspace, a document review is helpful. But it is less useful in identifying attitudes or motivations, since a document review mostly involves the process of the workplace and does not include the emotions or the characteristics of the workers in the workplace. Last is the software review. So software review is the study of existing software which can provide you with information about the current work procedures to the extent to which that they are constrained by the software design. So using software review can give you ideas on what questions you can ask for the user. However, getting information from a software review can sometimes have documents that are not accurate, codes that are very disorganized and hard to read, and some might outright not be usable because the current software is being discarded. To summarize, the methods of collecting information relating to applications include interviews, group meetings, observations, questionnaires, temporary job assignments, document review, or software review. For obtaining information related to requirements or applications, interviews and GAD meetings are the most common form of collecting information.
So next, let's go on to the 4.3 data collection and application type. In here, I'm going to discuss more on the tables where all of the things that has been discussed by the reporter kay na-apply na diri. So in this section, we identify the data gathering techniques and most useful for each application type. This is the 4 to 7 data collection techniques and data type table. So it is summarized the discussion of the above sections by matching technique for the data collection to data type are more likely to identify information of interest than using other techniques. So as the table shows, kanang naa sa technique, interview, and down to software review, kay mao na sila ang 7 techniques as discussed by the reporter. It is used for the data gathering. The interviews and the meetings are useful for electing all types of information. And this is the reason they are most frequently used application work. Maong naka-indicate nga all sa tanan. The interview and the meeting, the time, structure, completeness, ambiguity, semantics, and volume kay all siya, and then the semantics indicated here as values. So next we have the observation. The observation provide only crude numerical estimates of volumes and is restricted to current time, vary ambiguity, and possibly variable semantics because the information from the observation is unstructured. Some skills is required of the SE to impose a structure on it that fits the situation. Also, the information may be incomplete. So next we have the questionnaires. The explanation to this is the questionnaires can ask structured questions about any time frame but only obtain complete answers for the question asked. If the questions are open-ended and completeness might be quite low, the ambiguity in the questionnaire should be low also. but the question semantics might be misinterpreted by the respondents. Next, we have the temporary job assignment. Similar siya sa the observation. Ang mga information tends to be current and structured and incomplete depending on the period of work. While the ambiguity varies from low to medium nga magdepende kung unsa ka-defined ang structure the work is. The semantics content also might vary depending sa shared definitions in the work of the group. Next, we have the internal documents and external documents. They provide unstructured, incomplete information from which no relevant value information is likely. The internal documents are mostly oriented to the past or current situation. External documents are most oriented to the current or the future topics. Last, we have the software review. It provides the past and possibly current information that is structured because it is automated. Ang ambiguity dapat low to medium and semantics should be fixed since the application embeds definitions of the data and process in code. Information and volumes may be present but should be cross-checked using other methods. So next we have the data type and application type. Application types are transactions processing or the TPS, the query decision support, we have the DDS, group decision support, GDSS, executive information, EIS, and expert system ES. Each of these has one or more predominant data type characteristics that identifies its application. This is the table 4 to 8, the data type by application type. Before we go on to the table, to discuss the table, I'm going to discuss the data types that differentiate between the application types. Here, the TPS to expert system is the technique. So the definition of TPS is contain predominantly known, current, structured, and complete information. Let's recall that the TPS kay operational application sa usa ka company para makontrol and ma-maintain ang mga records of current operations. You must have known, structured, current, and complete information. You have the query. Our question posed of data to find problems and solutions and to analyze, summarize the report on the data. The query kaning have similar characteristic to the TPS. Then para ma-perform niya dapat ang data must be structured, complete, and interpreted consistently, being both ambiguous and or fixed semantics. Next is the DDS, or statistical analysis tools that allow development of information that aids the decision process. DDSS is the type of data that identifies all the frames might be represented, may be incomplete, ambiguous, have variable semantics, and medium to high volume. We have here the GDSS, or meeting facilitation tools for groups of people. GDSS tools operate in a structured manner, working in data that is unstructured, current, and future-oriented. The GDSS mostly deal with data that is incomplete and contains semantics and other ambiguities. Next is EIS, our future-oriented application that allows executives to scan the environment, identify trends, economic changes, or other industry activity that affect their governance of the company. The EIS deals mostly with messy data that is unstructured, incomplete, ambiguous, and contains variable semantics. Last is the expert systems. It manages and reason through semi-structured, incomplete, and ambiguous and variable semantics data. Next, we have the data collection, technique, and application type. In here, by combining the information in tables 4 to 7 and 4 to 8, naanadayan ang table 4 to 9, the data collection technique and application type. to summarize data collection techniques for each application type. Kani nga table entry kay boldface to show the principal method of data collection for each technique. Here we have the TPS, query DDS, GDSS, EIS, and PES. So let's talk about these two, the TPS and query. Applications can profit from the use of all techniques. So the interview and the meeting are predominant because they elect the broadest range of responses of the shortest time. We have next is the observation and temporary job assignment. Kaning duha. Observation and temporary job assignment. Useful siya kay nag-obtain siya, sila duha og background information about the current problem domain. Kaso, manginahanglan siya use with caution as not to prejudice the design sa anang application as well as the questionnaires. So next we have here the DSS. The DSS are shown as having a use for all data collection techniques, but not all techniques are practical in all cases. DSS are generally developed by people in jobs with significant of discretion in what they do and how they do it. Next, we have the GDSS are usually custom-built suites of software packages that provide different types of support for automated meetings. The other methods might have some limited value, both of these techniques. Observation and document review have specific limited role in providing the information needed to build the GDSS and the EIS and also the ES. Next, we have the EIS are not standard application with screen for data entry of some type and report that is displayed. EIS are information